It's not every day that I get the chance to talk to someone I grew up watching on television. My next guest is a bold, independent woman who pushed the boundaries in Hollywood, using her platform to tackle issues like homosexuality and classism. You may know her simply as Roseanne, but she's not only a famous actress and comedian, she's also a social activist and political figure, having just run for president under the Peace and Freedom Party. And that's why I'm especially excited to share my interview with Roseanne Barr. Check it out. So Roseanne, we're upon a potentially historical verdict when it comes to the question of same-sex marriage, and I can't help but think of your show, Roseanne, which tackled LGBT issues decades ago. I mean, it was one of the first shows to host gay characters and also to display an on-screen lesbian kiss per your request. Why was it so important to you to feature that issue, and how challenging was it at the time to push those boundaries on national television?
It was always important to me because I have a gay brother and a gay sister, and we were raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, and they went through a significant amount of bullying, and so it was always important to me because that was always a big issue in my life, and it was very, very difficult to get it on television, and it was a very hard fight, but it's proven to have been the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And those who are against this issue is definitely staying on the wrong side of history, Roseanne. But in addition to homosexuality, Roseanne confronted numerous social issues such as class, domestic violence, race, and women's rights. I mean, your show, I think it resonated with a lot of people because it represented the plight of the working class. I mean, how important do you think it is for people to be able to identify with real characters like this? And how come we don't see this type of programming anymore?
Well, the whole issue of class is like big taboo in America. You're not supposed to notice it, and you're not supposed to talk about it, and you're not supposed to oppose it. It's just supposed to be there like reality. So that was a hard thing too. It was a hard thing to talk about class, race, and gender in America. It still is.
But why do you think that we don't see anyone pushing the envelope like your show used to do?
Well, because it's too hard, and the only reason that I was able to do it is because I was just such a committed activist and committed fighter. But I know how hard it is for anybody else. First of all, it's really difficult to see things that are kept invisible, but it's really hard for artists to find their voice in the medium of television. Period.
Right. And let's talk about sexism, Roseanne, which I know that you're very vocal about today, especially as I'm looking at your timeline. I mean, I talk about women's rights a lot on this show, and I cannot tell you how many men tell me sexism doesn't exist anymore. And in fact, that sexism against men is actually more of a problem in society. Where is this mentality coming from?
It comes from a mentality of sexism. And just by virtue of the things they say, I mean, it's just ungodly ignorant, and it's ungodly ignorant that they have no idea that they're ignorant too. So it's like levels of patriarchy and patriarchal brainwashing and mind control.
And I can't help but when, as we're talking about this, think of the Steubenville rape case. I mean, this is a perfect example of how sexism does exist in society. Not only did the rapists get a slap on the wrist, but the media was showing sympathy toward the rapists, their verdict. I mean, is the media and entertainment responsible for perpetuating a rape culture?
Yeah, I think the media is responsible for perpetuating a rape culture. And, I mean, it's profitable for the people at the top who run the rape culture, who run it, and, they profit from it. And to say otherwise would be a big fat lie. But so, they don't want any kind of power shifted away from the way they have it set up in a very hierarchical manner with women's free labor at the bottom, largely slave labor, at the bottom of that big pyramid.
You've been a Hollywood insider for so long, yet you've been vocal for so long. I mean, how challenging is it to see your colleagues across Hollywood lacking for the Obama administration when they have so much power and influence that they could single-handedly shape the dialogue when so many people are watching them?
Well, I think that, this is a culture of fear, and nobody's more afraid than people in Hollywood. They're afraid that they'll drop out of the top, they're afraid that they'll drop from the bottom of the pyramid, maybe to the middle of the pyramid. But you know, they're the ones. Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure and all this culture of racism and sexism and classism and genderism and all of it in place. They continually feed it, and they make a lot of money doing it, and they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything. So, you know, they're not going to get brave enough to do that. I mean, I think that there aren't many of us who are brave enough to do that. And I'm just, you know, I'm lucky that I can do it, and I feel that I do it on behalf of many people in Hollywood too. I go to Hollywood parties, or you know, occasionally I go to Oscar parties and things like that. And people, big stars, people will grab me by the arm and take me aside and say, "I just want to thank you for the things you say." And it blows my mind, but that's the culture. It's a culture of fear for sure. You know, and it's a big culture of mind control too. MK Ultra mind control rules in Hollywood. If you don't know, Google that and look into it.
Well, we've talked about Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra mind control stuff from, I mean, this goes back decades and decades. But Roseanne, I mean, do you know people have been blacklisted? I mean, is it just kind of a self-censorship in Hollywood, or do people actually get edged out if they are too much against the grain?
Yeah, it's self-censorship after a while, but it's not just a crazy self-censorship. It's self-censorship because there's actually a danger that you will never work again. And people know it. Everybody has friends that it happened to, that maybe you said too much, or maybe you were too vocal on unpopular issues. And it's funny because it doesn't matter if 2 years later, I find this a lot, that 2 years later those unpopular issues become very mainstream. They still don't forgive the first person who does it. And that's kind of been my story there. When you're first, you're you know, going to be vilified, despite the fact that 2 years later everybody's saying what you said. You're still going to be vilified because you dared. And you know, like they say, the Chinese, you know, the Chinese have a myth or a saying that says the nail that stands up is hammered down, and that's how it is here and everywhere in the world. Right. You know, you don't really want to put yourself at odds with people who decide your future and pay, you know, for your work. But sometimes you have to. And I was very lucky that I had a successful show that made me a lot of money, and so that I can do that. And I feel that I owe that to the people I came from, to say those things that maybe they can't say because they're afraid they'll be fired, or they're afraid even that they'll be put in jail or whatever. I'm going to do it because why not?
Well, that's why I love you, Roseanne, because you are an artist, you're a comedian, but you use your craft to also really express daring political statements that are too true. And like you just said, I mean, years later, all these things are validated. I mean, look at MSNBC 10 years after the Iraq War saying how we were all duped. I mean, they were part of the duping. So it's amazing to see, you know, as it's mainstream, we all know these things now. It's easy to come out and say, you know, what happened? We were all sold this war. But Roseanne, weeks ago, you tweeted something that I loved. You said, failed Senate, failed Congress, failed executive branch, failed Supreme Court. You know, people look at this and they agree with you and they say, you know, this corruption, this blatant corruption is why we need less government. What do you say to those people?
Well, those people that say they want less government are just a bunch of liars, because, you know, they're trying to get the government on the backs of all the gays right now. So they do not, in fact, want less government at all. They want more government. And it's funny that the whole time they're trying to amp up the government on everybody's personal freedoms and civil rights, they're talking about they want less government. Well, you can't have it both ways. One of the things you people are saying is just a lie. And which one is it?
And also, the government has bailed out these banks, which is basically government socialism for what capitalism has turned into, this crony capitalism where socialism is bailing out the capitalists. It's just an amazing hypocritical thing that this country's turned into. But you decided to be the change, Roseanne. You ran for president under the Peace and Freedom Party in the last election, yet the stigma remains. Voting third party is a wasted vote. I mean, how dangerous is this to perpetuate the lesser than two evils mentality?
It's very, very dangerous, and it's very, very sad. And you know what? I'll tell you, it's very un-American. It's like, you know, they don't like America, and they don't like, you know, what we're all proud of about our country. They want to beat down our right to speak out, our right to dissent, our right to be a whistleblower, to do the right thing. They don't like any of those things, but they won't be able to stop it. So, you know, a word of encouragement from me and from you and from people who think like us is very, very important, and it's very important that it happens over the people's airwaves.
And I know you were...
So thank you for what you do,
Well,
too.
thank you, Roseanne. That means a lot to me. I know that you were also a supporter of Occupy Wall Street, which unfortunately was violently suppressed by militarized police forces all across the country. And Roseanne, I tell people that everything we do every day is political. I mean, every action we take is a vote, essentially. Any more words of advice you can give to people who are watching this and saying, you know, there's nothing that can be done and we don't have a voice?
Well, I'd say that's not true. There's so much that can be done, and don't stop now, because we've put a crack in it, and now the light will get in. So don't stop now, whatever you do. Don't stop. And, you know, they talk about Occupy Wall Street and this and that and the other, but, you know, it needs a reboot, like everything having to do with resisting a country being owned by banksters and both parties of its government being owned by banksters. There's no way we can turn our back or quiet down now. It'll only get worse. And so now's the time to amp it up. And for Occupy Wall Street and all these vehicles and venues of resistance, it's time to come together. And I have, my theory is that it's sexism that really beat all those things down. Because in every single thing, that is not led by women these days, it's going to fail, because women are tired of listening to men. We you know, as a class, not as a sex, but as a class, we're just tired of failed policies of males that continually put everything in conflict, and then so there can be a winner and a loser. That's not the way women think, and it's not the things that those are not the things that women value anymore. So I think that we're going to find that any method of resistance, any organ of resistance is going to fail unless it is led by women. And I see evidence of that everywhere on earth. And, you know, it's going to come to America, too, and it is coming. And so I just give everybody a heads up to take a look at that and see if I'm not right.
Roseanne, and I thank you for being one of those powerful women leaders that we can look up to and follow the words that you're saying, which is the spirit of dissent's alive and well, and we need to keep pushing back against this system. Thank you so much, Roseanne Barr, actress and comedian.
Thank you so much, and I hope everybody starts listening more to women. Thank you so much.